All right. Welcome. I'm Rebecca with Round Sky Solutions. I'm the communications person. I'm here with Shelley, and we are here to talk about her experience in the Cooperative Leadership Certification Program and more generally integrating tools to support leadership, to support shared power and practice within the spaces that she's been using our tools in. And so that's what we're here to talk about. And the application for the training, if you're hearing something that you like or that you're curious about, is today, January 27th. And I'll accept applications through the weekend if you're seeing this a little late. And with that, Shelley, I'd love to hear an introduction to you, let people know who you are, and also where you've been practicing these tools.
Yeah, right on. So my name is Shelley Rogers. I live in Gainesville, Florida, and I've been practicing these tools in two contexts primarily, but also just in my life in general. So the first one is where I'm employed. It's a nonprofit youth development organization, and they had a lot of systems in place already when I was hired, but I had just taken this course when I got hired a few months later, and I said I would take the job as long as they allow me to integrate some of these practices. And luckily, the executive director was very excited about what I was bringing to the table, and I have been able to bring forward a lot of what Collab has to offer and adapted it some to what the capacities were here. And then I also started implementing Collab from the ground up with a nonprofit board that I was just getting started with back in 2020. And we have been utilizing the practices and tools pretty much since day one, and it has been incredibly helpful to apply from the ground up. I can see that that's been a really great way to start, but it's certainly possible to integrate it into an existing structure also.
I really appreciate that you have these two perspectives too, these two experiences of starting from the ground up, starting integrating these tools that are kind of shifting ways of being, and then also in an organization that already has ways of being. Maybe their systems weren't set in place necessarily in the way that some spaces have it, or the way that we ask spaces to, and then integrating those. I think that I'm really curious to hear more about those pieces. And maybe this will come out of this next question around what's one highlight you've had from your experience in the NCLCP, short for Cooperative Leadership Certification Program.
Yeah, so I mean, I think in the place where I'm employed, the standard meeting practice has been incredibly useful. It was interesting, I came in as a brand new employee, and I think, perhaps my style wasn't received well as a facilitator, but basically I was able to sort of receive that feedback, or at least notice what was happening. and and then we came up with a different strategy where we had teams that would rotate facilitation and scribing duties. And then, as the team has evolved, what we've moved to is that basically the executive director facilitates every meeting and I scribe every meeting. And that has been in the current team that we have, that has been incredibly effective because everybody knows their part and knows what to do and knows it's predictable, and all the systems work well. And then also we've instead of doing ops reports every single meeting, we have staff meetings on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So ops reports are always on Tuesdays, and then often we don't have time to do much agenda processing on Tuesdays because it leads into all these other discussions, but it generates the agenda for the Thursday meeting. And it's really helpful to have that rhythm. With the nonprofit that I have helped to start, it's been the standard meeting practice has been our bread and butter. It's like the way that we ground ourselves in all sorts of ways. And, we have our board living agenda, and then we have basically used that template and customized it to all of the committees within the board. And so it's really, I love how easily replicable the tools are within Collab, and how you can customize them to the team, to like the flavor of the team that you're in and what you think they might be willing to digest.
Yeah, there is something about how it takes its own life, like life form. That's why we call it a living agenda, because it's like the living pieces of our organization, and that it should be changing. It should be customized to what we need. And I'm curious, you say the standard meeting practice, people may not know what that is. It's
Oh
a
yeah.
it's okay. It's a flow of our, like, it's a flow of how to hold a meeting that includes some check-ins, it includes admin pieces, it includes accountability checks, which we call ops reports, and then agenda, like get into the meat of it. And I'm curious about how that, I like your flow of doing ops, because sometimes people are, it's hard to get into the ops at first because we're not used to updating our team on our work in that way. We're kind of used to doing it one-on-one or not at all, unless if something happens where we need to all of a sudden, or very project based. But it's such a useful place to spend time to align and see where the gaps are. And I'm curious, how was that shift? Do you know how that shift was for your team around using the standard meeting practice, using ops? And it's
I mean,
okay.
I think I mean, even I have a resistance to ops reports, honestly, because it takes time. But I think it's really useful, and I think it's really helpful, especially in the works in the two organizations that I'm part of. Their social justice work, and so there's just a lot of burnout that happens in that realm. And the way that the standard meeting practice is designed so that there's transparent accountability and information tracking, and that like the design is to prevent burnout, I think that is transformational for teams, or it can be. Just so, and the in one group we've done better at integrating appreciations and versus the other one, and we do it all the time. But even just being able to acknowledge what other people are doing is powerful. And it's powerful for the person, that they feel seen and heard and valued. And like now, me as an HR manager, I see that is everything. You praise as much, way more than you criticize, and that this format gives you space, builds in space to do that on a basis, and that's huge.
Right. And it's important because I think sometimes people assume like, people know that I appreciate them. Like, how would they
They
not know
don't.
that? And assumptions are just not something that's great about our systems, is that we're really trying to make things explicit and move past assumptions, and also make really clear spaces for things to happen like that. Appreciations, but also in that space, I've experienced when people have hard questions. And it's a lot easier to bring the hard questions when you have appreciation built up, and also when you have a clear space to say, hey, this has been on your plate for a while and you haven't gotten to it. What's going on? Maybe how can we support you? Is this not a role for you? Like, how can we problem solve that? And then it goes on the agenda. It doesn't
Yeah.
derail us from
Yeah, I love the way that Collab focuses on check-ins, kind of, that it's not
Mhm.
about shaming people for like being overwhelmed, or not having the capacity to do everything that's falls within their role, but it's more about approaching things with curiosity instead of like the finger wag, which is never effective.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, tools are just tools, so that's part of why I could see someone bringing in the things that we need to unlearn, the shame, those pieces, And I can see, so for people listening, it's not 100%, but it does provide a container to kind of shift that. Like, actually, that's not how we want to work together. This is how we want to work together. Um,
Sure.
yeah, that's great. And this maybe rolls well into the next question of what's something you learned about yourself or your work and over this process. And you kind of been in this since you're in level 1 cooperative leadership certification program. That was 3 years ago. And now you're in level 2. So you have a lot of time and like digestion of this material, but what's something you've learned?
Yeah, I think from level 1, the personal development topic is really fairly introductory, but learning about somatic awareness has been very helpful to me just as a human being. I was in 2020, I was having a lot of problems with my neck and my jaw, like holding so much tension and like really like having some pretty significant physical problems as a result. And it helped me like it made me realize like I need to pursue some different like health modalities to kind of rectify the situation, because otherwise, it could be, I could see that, it could become even more problematic. So um that the somatic awareness that I started in 2020 with CLCP1 has grown and has informed my personal development topic in level 2. And I feel like I'm just evolving a little bit with the same theme, but it's all comes from like being aware of how my body processes information and tension and challenges. And I
Yeah.
think I think maybe I intuitively sort of, when growing up, my grandpa would always say like, when you're sick, it's all mental, you know, and but I think that there's truth in that. Like, there's wherever your body is sick, it's telling you something, and so that being able to dive deeper into that, for my own personal self, has been transformational.
Yeah, the ways that we hold tension, the ways that we kind of it manifests differently for everyone.
Yeah.
And that so the somatics piece, like bodily tuning in, can be hard for a lot of people because that awareness is hard once we're really well. Some people, me included, are good at ignoring those pieces and disconnecting body with in your mind and how you show up. And but there's just so much. I mean, we know this in like really ancient ways. There's so much our body tells us. And I think our training is a little bit unique in that we do include this in this space. And that is it's one piece of the training, but it's pretty robust in some ways for some people that it's really about picking a space in your picking a space for yourself that you want to tend to, a space in your body. How you want to do that is all up to you, and it shows up differently for everybody. So I think I'm glad that you got that out of that program, that piece of the program.
Hmm.
And I'm curious about any advice you'd have for people that are considering enrolling in this or integrating these kinds of practices in general.
Yeah, I feel like in any type of collaboration, there's hurdles that arise. And so, and we're all human, like we don't always know the best way to mitigate them. But with Collab, the whole program offers a set of tools and practices that you can apply to almost any challenge. And so it's really a wellspring of resources that are multi-layered, and that you sort of learn something different every time you apply them, and you can it's very it's not cumulative, but like it builds on itself as you practice with it and as you apply it into different scenarios. And so I feel like, even though I'm a very like confident facilitator and scribe now, there's still things that I bump up against that I'm not sure how to deal with, or like even like think about. And so having this like at our fingertips is so useful. um, yeah, and like, the even just the coaching option that's available within the program is huge, because you can actually speak to the people who designed this entire thing and get their um, customized advice. Like that's an incredible value.
Well, I'm just so glad that you're in our community and that this has been helpful for you. And there is something about it creating a roadmap for challenges. I mean, lots of challenges come up, and it's really about meeting your team and how to like find collectively how we move forward. And containers can help us do that. How are we going to make the decision? How, like, what could be our process for deciding this kind of direction with the challenge that we're having? There's
Yeah.
just something about the collective wisdom that our tools offer access to in a really
Yeah.
clear way.
And it's almost like even just mentally knowing that I have a familiarity with them and that I can dive into them whenever I need to is like a security blanket. It's like it's just helpful to know that if
Yeah.
I confront an issue that is confounding or that is just like out of my realm of what I've ever encountered before, I can go to those resources and like there's probably something that will help.
Right. There's also, I think you mentioned this earlier, the predictability of coming to
Yes.
the meeting practice. And for everybody, you may not know what's going to come out of the meeting, but you know what to expect in terms of the flow. And that can help some people like put shoulders down, like I know what's going to happen
Hmm.
here. And I know how I can participate. I know where my pathway is to kind of step into my power and work with and experiment with what we can do to move forward. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're coming to a close here. Anything else you'd like to say as we close?
Um, I just think that there's an incredible value in learning about integrative consent decision making, both in like professional realms and personal realms. I feel like, a lot of these things are designed for working collaborations, but of course, you collaborate with the people that you're in relationship with every day as well. And I think that um, understanding how to integrate tensions and how to process objections or what is a valid objection, those are ideas and concepts that you can employ anywhere in your life. And it's been really helpful to me, both professionally and personally.
Well, thank you so much for your time
Yeah,
today. It's been really great to hear more about what your practice has been.
absolutely. Anytime.